There you go.
Got it. Doreen?
Yeah, present.
Doreen? And Pasquale? Okay. Do you need to be sworn in, Patrick?
Yes.
Sorry, Steve, what was that?
Do you need to be sworn in?
Okay.
Do you swear from the testimony you're about to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Please go ahead and present the first case.
All right.
Only case, I guess.
Yeah. So let me pull up. Yeah. All right. So you guys are able to see their new application. And I can just go through kind of where we're at right now. The applicant is requesting a council variance at this next meeting. They need a council variance to permit first floor residential and accessory residential uses, which are not above commercial use. Building height standards, they need a variance to increase the maximum building height from 72 feet to 84 feet. They need a minimum parking reduction, which would require them to reduce the number of parking spaces by 9 from 249 to 240. They also request the variance to allow bicycle parking in a publicly accessible area, which is not visible from high streets, and then vision triangles.
Hey, Patrick, I'm sorry to interrupt, but your screen is gray for all of us.
Oh, sorry, I thought I was sharing.
I think you are, but it's not coming through for some reason. Maybe try to start over.
It was initially. It was up initially.
Okay. Let me try it one more time. Are you guys able to see that?
Yep.
Yes.
And what about now?
No. Yes. No.
Okay.
Well,
are you guys able to see it?
well,
Yeah,
there's a.
I'll share, Patrick, and you can, that way you can focus on your staff report.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Christopher. Do I need to send you posting?
I got it.
Or the share? Okay, you got it?
Yep.
You can just stop sharing, and then he can take over. Thanks, Christopher.
Yep, appreciate that.
Great.
Okay, sorry about that, but staff notes that the council variance is not dependent on the site plan, but if approved, the height variance can be applied to any portion of the site. Design, of course, is required for to go before the UIDRB, but I know that was a question that we had previously. Christopher, if you go to page 2, you can see the changes of the project. But the applicant is also requesting a conceptual review at the next hearing for the proposed design and the massing at the hearing, but they would like a vote on the council variances. So yeah, staff is generally in support of the proposal and views in the incorporation of preservation as a mitigating factor for the proposed height and variances, but staff acknowledges that the proposal does not preserve entire buildings, but notes the benefits of preserving the character through the proposed design, and that this level of preservation will benefit the character of the area. Staff also notes that the existing buildings on site are not protected by existing code. So yeah, I'm going to walk through a brief summary of the board comments and revisions to the project over the past year, and then we can have a discussion from there. So in July of 2019, the board did not initially feel that the project benefited from the facadectomies and did not consider them preservation or necessarily worthy of a height variance. They had asked the applicant to look to see how the proposal impacted the surrounding neighborhoods and suggested moving the tallest section to the middle of the site. The board presented 2 options: preserving more of the existing buildings or scrape the site and design an interesting quality project. Excuse me. They came back in September 2019 for the second revision, and there were concerns about the south elevation near the row houses, or so they could support height variances with the appropriate conditions. They also noted that density is controlled by height, and there are no density regulations. They also said that not enough explanation on why the height variance was needed for preservation of two buildings. At this point in time, the applicant only was preserving the two buildings at the King and High facades. In November 19th, the applicant came before the board again and presented a completely new build in response to comments in July 2019, and that one option is design an interesting high-quality project without preservation. In response to that, the board requested to see some preservation and not opposed to additional height if the applicant preserves more than one building. The board also thought previous proposals were more appropriate and should be developed further. The board then, the applicant then came back in January with the redesign proposal with additional preservation elements based on the board staff and comments. And the board asked for additional details on the transition from public space to private space, and that this was better to interpret the townhomes instead of attempting to replicate them. Additionally, at that time, solar studies and additional details on the floor plans to rebuild the King and High frontages were submitted. And then in July 2020, the vote was made for the 123 tower may be acceptable, but should be accompanied by height reduction elsewhere. And noted that it has to do with the scale of the site and concerned that the storefront preservation is not true historic preservation. So that's kind of a rundown of where we're at now. You can see their latest proposal. That's the ninth down on the screen to the bottom right. But I guess this conversation that we have in the board in the business meeting is to identify if we think this is enough to move forward, or if we need to identify anything additionally for a vote.
All right, let's simplify this and cut to the chase. I see nothing in this proposal that changes my opinion about the project. I mean, you just did it in your rundown, and it goes back to the very first time they presented to this board, which is they have never presented a compelling argument as to why they deserve more bulk on the site than current zoning gives them. And the only thing they've apparently used as the basis for that argument is that they are somehow preserving the historic fabric of the site, which I think a number of the members of the board have questioned based on the fact that the only thing that's being kept are the two facades of the building on King and High. You know, I think a number of us have expressed the opinion that we weren't opposed to height in general, but there needed to be a compelling reason for it and a compelling design that put the height in the right location. So I've got two problems with the proposal I'm seeing right now. One, I still don't hear a compelling argument as to why they deserve more bulk than what the project than what the current zoning gives them. And two, they're putting the additional bulk to the south and to the west, where it's going to negatively impact a two-story single-family residential neighborhood to the west and two-story townhouses to the south. So, I mean, I don't see any qualitative improvement. You know, if they would like to move forward, they need to take seriously the comments the board has provided over the last year and really address them. I mean, and I can do this all year. I mean, you know, this just seems to be an exercise in trying to wear down the board by just presenting some rehashed version of the same thing.
Keone, I wonder if we can separate the variance from the design for a minute. And I wonder, the only way I could support a height variance at this point is to assume that we could get somewhere design-wise. Maybe that's a big leap, but let's assume we could get somewhere design-wise. the only thing I could potentially support is a variance for the height of, what was it, 12 feet or 10 feet?
72 to 84.
Okay, 12.
Yeah, 13 feet,
Okay, 72 to 84, 12 feet. So,
12 feet.
the only way I could support that is if it was written such that anything above the 72 feet has to be an equal reduction of anything below the 72 feet.
I'm in agreement. I think Frank's proposal is a good one.
You know, in other words, I'm not going to agree to any more mass on the site than what the code allows. But I do acknowledge that there are design reasons to be able to vary the height. So, you know, but I'm also would also put the applicant on notice that I, for one, and doesn't sound like Keone does either, supports the design of the building. You know, I think there's a lot of work to do. I will say that when I saw this scheme, I thought, well, if this was the first scheme they showed us a year and a half ago, then, you know, I would think that there was a lot to talk about and progress to be made. So, you know, so that's how I feel about it. I would disassociate the design completely from support for a variance and only support a variance that netted out to no more volume than the code allows. And we could say a certain percentage, if we wanted, a certain percentage of the site could be over 72 feet to 84. Or what, I don't know. I don't know how to word it, but that's my thought.
Carrie or Steve, do you guys have any comments?
I just have a quick question. So this one was voted on by us a month or two ago at the longest. What my thought was that they were coming back with changes. What are the changes? Can you just summarize what changed since the last time that we voted no?
Yeah, Christopher, you go to page 2, they should be laid out there. Yeah, so there we can see the changes based on previous comments. The previous proposal was 11 to 12 stories. It's been reduced to 6 and 7. 3/4 of the building along High Street are at 6 stories, which are 72 feet. And then 1/4 of the buildings along High Street are at 7 stories at 85.
Yeah.
Previously, it had 306 units, and currently it's 177. And then the preservation elements, they're maintaining all the elements of historic preservation previously proposed, which includes preserving the facade at King and High, replacing in kind the exterminary building facade, replacing in kind the townhomes facade, and replacing in kind the gas station facade at the rear entrance.
Let me caution
And then
you. Go ahead.
I was just going to finish the layout changes too. They maintained the first floor design along King and High, and they reduced the height and improved articulation. They also stepped back the corner on King and High at the 6th floor an additional 10 feet.
Okay.
I want to caution you about this height table. You have to read it closely. It says 3/4 of the buildings along High Street are 6 stories and 1/4 are 7 stories. That is not 3/4 of the site is 72 feet and 1/4 of the site is 85 feet. Okay. That's just.
In fact, the entire southern and western perimeter of the site is at 85 feet.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I guess I would also caution staff about uncritically accepting their use of the term historic preservation. And you may want to talk to your colleagues at HRC. You know, we can argue whether preserving the east and north facades of the King and High building constitutes preservation or not. I don't care. I can let that one go. But demolishing 3 buildings on site and then rebuilding something that kind of looks like them is not preservation. And so, you know, fine, if they want to do that, that's fine. I don't care, but don't make it an argument for historic preservation.
Yeah. See,
Okay, yeah.
see,
If I wear colonial clothing and put on a white wig, I'm not George Washington.
Sure.
oh,
Understood.
I would like
Yeah,
to
we
see
did-
that though. I would like to see that though, Keone.
Halloween's coming up. You know?
You have a cherry tree, Frank?
What's that?
You have a cherry tree?
Yeah, that needs chopping. You know, I'm, you know, where I am with this is that the design is totally immaterial to me, really, and how much is preserved or not is in many ways immaterial to me. It's just if I were designing this building, and I would like to have some leeway into height, for, you know, design purposes, articulation purposes, as long as I gave up some height in other areas to compensate for it. And you know, all the stuff that they mentioned as the mitigating reasons are all beside the point as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I
And I
mean,
think-
look, I object to them because it seems to be that that's what they're pinning their
Yes.
desire for additional bulk on the site. But
Yes.
look, I think Frank and, you know, Steve and Carrie can weigh in, but in my perspective, I think Frank has provided a very good compromise in order for the applicant to get to their goals, which is if they want 85 foot on some portion of the site, they need to accept a reduction on some portion of the site, because we have yet to hear a compelling argument for just an increase in bulk on the site. And they need to separate, because they're the ones that want to conflate the two, the design from the zoning variance. And if the zoning variance is, you know, the view triangles, residential use on the ground floor, those are all fine. I don't think any of us have huge issues about them. If they want to come back, if they want to come to the meeting and say, hey, look, you know, we'd like to build taller than 72 feet because, you know, we think we're gonna get better units, or it's going to be better for the site, and, you know, but we accept that that's, you know, we need to trade off, and so therefore we're going to reduce bulk on other portions of the site by a commensurate amount. And once we get the variance done, we'll come back to you with a design to talk about the design based on past variances. That to me seems like a reasonable path forward.
Yeah, this is Jackie Yeoman. I was just going to say that's very helpful feedback, and I think that puts the ball, and I think Mike's on the call, but Patrick will follow up with him. I think that puts it in Mike's court to work with Building and Zoning Services to find out if and how something like that could be worded into a variance. You know, I don't know if the applicant would even be willing to do it, but if they were, I think that he'll need to work with Building and Zoning Services staff to figure out how that may be possible, or if it's possible through a variance.
So I've got a couple of comments. This is Carrie, and a question for staff. So the question first, I thought, Patrick, you mentioned when you first started that the variance, if it were granted, the height variance would enable them to basically put the additional height anywhere. Okay, that's not me.
No, it's me. I'm trying to hang it up. I'm having trouble. I don't know why, but I'm having trouble. It won't hang up for me. There it goes. It's gone now. Sorry, guys. Add to the bone. You know what I mean?
So anyway, did I mishear that, Patrick? That if a height variance were granted, it basically gives them the right to do it where it's site wide, or could it be specific?
That you heard that correct, but the design would still have to go through the UIDRB. But
This is Jackie again. That's what I was trying to clarify. As the variance is currently written, it would allow the height anywhere on the site. And so it's really going to be up to the applicant to work with Building and Zoning Services to find out if they can do anything different than that. Like if they can figure out a way to get the variance to be more specific. And I just don't know. I don't know. I mean, I know there's a way to do it, but I don't know how complicated it is. So.
Well, I think it's just a math equation. It's 84 feet. Any portion that is above 72 is subtracted from height elsewhere in same for same, same for same building volume. I think. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something, but maybe not.
Okay, so my other comments are it's independent really of this design now because they've removed it from the Wall Street alley. Is what is the situation with a one-story garage? It's obviously not part of this anymore. So what are the plans for where that thing could move? I'm really interested in understanding that. And then lastly, the most popular thing in the city right now is trying to figure out a way to expand exterior dining. If the anticipates restaurant uses on the ground floor, I would certainly think they might. And have they given any consideration as to the first floor retail? Have you accommodated a sidewalk that's wide enough to actually provide any outdoor dining? And, because I look at it, it's like, it's really narrow. And who knows when that's going to go away, but even independent of the whole COVID issue, I mean, that's a really nice thing to have along a city sidewalk is, space for exterior retail use like that. So I just don't know what they're thinking on that front.
Noted. I don't know entirely off the top of my head, but I can look into that for you.
I just realized there is a complication to the calculation. You could potentially, if it's written badly, you could game it. In other words, if the light well, if you assume the light well was 0, right? You could see it as a credit, but it has to be written such that we're talking about building volume here, not about vacant ground floor space. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I think you could game it. And Jackie, that's why you're cautioning us, correct?
Yeah, I'm just saying I mean, I think this is great. Like, it's really good discussion, and this what gives us time that we can check in as staff with, I think Kelsey Preby is on this case, and but the applicant can as well, and we can have those discussions ahead of the hearing. So yeah, no, this is all really helpful and good comments. So thank you.
Any other comments?
I'd like to hear from Mike.
Mike Shannon?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, members of the review board, I mean this with all due respect. I have participated in dozens of business meetings, and 90% of the time, number one, I'm not afforded the ability to talk. And similarly, there are never substantive discussions about the merits of the application. It is a matter of getting things ready for the agenda. Having said that, I appreciate everything that was said. There are a lot of misconceptions here that I won't try to address now in the form of a business meeting, but I do feel compelled just to make a couple brief comments. Number one, it's a strong misconception and no intent to try to game the system here. We felt that we went from 11 stories on the so-called tower element down to 7 stories. Similarly, we reduced the remaining building to the code maximum of 72 feet, and we actually lowered the elevation on the corner building. It was our intent to say 85 foot was the maximum for that portion identified by Keone as a problematic portion, the south and western portion of the building. The idea is that when you have a site plan or a building elevation, they reflect each other, and the text of the variance would only apply to that portion of the building shown on the site plan as being 85 feet, which is about 25% of the lineal foot of the frontage on High Street. The remaining 75%, I believe, of the lineal frontage on High Street is at 72 feet or below that. And point in case with the King Avenue building. I won't debate Keone on the historic preservation. He's more well-versed in it than me. But we do have Randy Black that can address that at the hearing, who held that position for probably close to 20 years at the city.
Are you
And-
compensating Randy Black?
Am I what, please?
Or either you or the applicant compensating Randy Black?
I would certainly hope so. He has a contract that I didn't review, but he is working with Branch Styles and Collegiate Development, so I certainly hope he's being compensated. And I don't know that that would affect his opinion as to whether or not we're preserving elements of this so-called iconic corner. As you all know,
Your argument is noted.
I'm sorry, was I muted? I apologize.
Yeah, I just said your argument is noted. I hear what you're saying.
Oh, okay. All right. So, so a little bit flabbergasted that in 18 months, we never had a business meeting on this. And I was not aware, since I've been practicing in front of the review board, that you conducted these meetings. Jackie thinks it was time well spent. So I'll defer to her since she's apparently done these before.
Yeah, we can touch base with you, Mike. You know, we instituted the new 4-week process in July. And so we're trying to take advantage of this as a way to help move projects and get, you know, the difficult projects to get feedback and comments to, you know, allow the applicant to have time to respond. So this is meant to be a benefit for both the board and you as the applicant. So, you know, we're happy to touch base with you on this after the fact and, you know, kind of explain our thinking on it.
Yeah, and having done that in advance would have been very helpful.
Yes.
So, and it didn't happen. So, hey, I understand what's going on. With all due respect, my brother's a shrink. The only time I ever asked him for advice, I told him I thought I was paranoid, as I am on this case. And he reassured me that, Mike, just because you think you're paranoid doesn't mean people really aren't out to get you. So that was good advice from my older brother. And just the timing of it, in conjunction with everything else we've been doing to try to meet the neighborhood demand, was inherently suspicious. But if you say it's a normal course of business that you decided to institute in July and it just happened to fall here in September, I'll take it at what it's worth, and we'll continue to work with you, the zoning staff, the board. And as you know, we meet with the full commission next Wednesday after having met with the zoning commission already this week. Thanks, everybody, for your participation.
Mike, just to be clear, I think the city is really trying to make a good faith effort here to help you. I think they've watched your project come in front of the board for the last year or so without making any visible progress, and they want you to succeed. So I think the intent of this meeting was certainly not with any ill intent. It was their attempt to facilitate a casual conversation between members of the board to try and provide substantive information that they could take back to you to allow you to move forward in this process.
Yeah, I appreciate the explanation. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, then we'll call this meeting adjourned. This business meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.